And on a personal note, thank you. That was positively divine.
Your world has strange customs.
Don't group me with the likes of them.
True. You wouldn't have the grit.
Hey, Kilted Warrior here. Hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe if you enjoy the video, and know that the question of the day is, which is your favourite D&D race that is playable in Baldurs Gate 3, and why? I'll give my thoughts at the end of the video, and make sure to let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, let us begin.
Depends on the type. Ice Devils hate an inferno, but that's an easy one. Orthons love projectiles. What they don't love is getting their bombs lobbed right back in their faces. Demons, on the other hand, every demon is absolutely singular. You can't ever think you've got them typed out. Sharp instincts, sharp weapons, and a knack for improvisation. That's the only way to survive them. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Karlach, the fiery Hellion. She spent a decade in servitude to the archdevil Zariel, forced to kill, fight, and destroy at her master's whim. Beaten, but not broken, yet she would find herself freed upon a nautiloid ship of the Ithalids. Yet what is freedom without purpose? Karlach would use the skills she'd honed over the years, of killing all manners of creatures, devils, demons, and she would hunt those who would harm others, and she would never go back to hell. The Sword Coast needs a hero, someone with the fire of freedom within them, a hunter to kill the monsters that plagued it. The build. So how do you make Karlach into the demon hunter? Well, the goal is to focus on her use of a crossbow and make effective application of the many arrow types which, if like me, you've probably ignored in most of your playthroughs. So by the end of this, Karlach will have a particular set of skills that involve shooting, slicing, burning, freezing, and assassinating anyone stupid enough to pick a fight with her favourite Hellion. So you're taking a ranger at the start, the benefit it gives to fighting, its damage dealing at range and close, but also adding in the sneak attacks and utility offered by a rogue, and the tactical options of a battle master at the end. Yes, this is a 3-in-1 build. That means you'll have a bonus action for mixing different poisons and potions each turn. It means you'll have crowd control with Hordebreaker. It means synergizing with an ally to get those sweet sneak attacks. And in the end you'll have action surge, superiority die. And Karlach will be able to debilitate, humiliate, and assassinate any foe. So how exactly does it kick off? Well, first you start with a ranger, and then you focus on dex for your ranged weapons and for the improvement to the finesse weapons, which will be required for sneak attacks. Up close, that is. This build does prefer range, and of course you can do ranged sneak attacks. Yet since you have no problem getting close, you'll also want some good constitution, as well as a bit of charisma, which is always good. And for the proficiencies, I like taking intimidation as it fits the more ruthless hunter element of this build. Also, you want acrobatics and athletics, they're always good. With that, you're ready to get going. Just remember to pick up the crossbow that you can find in the starting area. There's a few of them, and it will be essential to the demon hunter going forward. Level 6. So by the time you reach level 6, we should be around Act 2's starting point. So what do we have going for us this far? First, you have your base class, level 1 ranger. You have a favoured enemy. I went with bounty hunter, as investigation proficiency is good to have, and ensnaring enemies can be useful. Also, it fits nicely with the demon hunter / bounty hunter feel of this Karlach build. You also get a choice with Natural Explorer. I went with Beast Tamer so that I could summon the good old Raven Familiar so that I could blind enemies. Level 2, you'll be taking your first rogue level, and this will give you the all-important sneak attack, which, remember, can be a ranged attack or a melee one. Also with the rogue you get to pick some expertise of your choice. Note, for the sneak attack you only need an enemy to be adjacent to an ally, so Karlach can, as I will discuss in the tactics section, make use of this from range. From there you're going to beeline for level 5 ranger. These levels will get you your fighting style. I went with archery obviously. Also you get a few spell slots and spells. But note that they're not terribly important for this build, so feel free to pick what you like. That said, Hunter's Mark is great for extra damage and it can be reapplied with bonus action. Also at level 5 ranger you'll be able to get your spike growth, which is a great crowd control ability, which I've mentioned in previous videos. That said, at level 3 you'll be picking your subclass. You can go with Gloomstalker, it does work, but I ended up landing on the Hunter, which is thematic, but also for one reason: Hunter's Prey. With Hunter's Prey you get to choose one of 3 options, and Hordebreaker is the one you want. But why is it great? Well, with Hordebreaker you can get a second attack before you even unlock your extra attack at level 5, so long as your enemies are near each other, which is not unusual in this game. Moreover, once you get your extra attack, it still stacks and allows you to have another attack, giving you 3 attacks if the circumstances permit, while also allowing you to use your offhand bonus attack action too, as Hordebreaker does not use a bonus action. It effectively counts as a special extra attack. Also remember that Hordebreaker can be used at range or in melee. So by level 6 you're already the best damage dealer in your team, and with medium armor being viable and using dex weapons across the board, you're very versatile and are able to mix in AoE arrows as well as Hordebreaker for crowd control as well. But you also have poisons for single targets to cause all manner of debilitating effects, but also just some extra damage with your basic poisons. Mix that in with your sneak attacks and you're getting increasingly lethal as Karlach. Also remember, level 4 you get your feats for the ranger. I just focused on boosting my dex as it helps my attacks, and also with medium armor there is a set in Act 2 as well as Act 3 which has no dex limit, so it just improves your AC as a result. But also for other feats you might want to go with things that focus on 2 weapon handling. That said, that is unnecessary if you're going to take the fighter levels later on, which will get you another fighting style. Level 10. As always, level 10 should be arriving around about the end of Act 2 or into Act 3. This is when the Demon Hunter takes shape, as you might expect. So at level 6 you'll have 5 levels in Ranger, Hunter, and 1 in Rogue. So for levels 7 up to 9 you'll be taking levels in Rogue. So level 2 Rogue, it will get you your special Rogue bonus actions which will help us dash around and disengage if we need to. That said, this build is fine in melee, so you won't be using them too much. I tended to use them simply to dash to a point where I could get a good shot or spell off if needed. So for level 3, you'll be getting more sneak attack damage and you get to pick your subclass. And there are 2 options here. You can go with Assassin if you really want to home in on those sneak attacks and initiative based shenanigans. But I like to go with Thief here. So Thief lets you get Fast Hands, which allows 2 bonus actions a turn. That means 2 offhand attacks, 2 poisons, 2 potions, Rogue Dash, and then another bonus action after. You can simply mix and match tons of abilities when required, or reapply Hunter's Mark and then poison a weapon and shoot. It's all about versatile options for the ultimate hunter. Then at level 4, we'll be getting to pick another feat. I went with maxing out Dex, but again there are other options as I said, such as if you opted for light armor, though I think medium armor works great with this build, given that we're focusing on certain equipment, which I will discuss later. On the other hand, you can always home in on the 2-handed fighting if you want to be in melee more. So that takes us up to level 9. One might be tempted to continue Ranger or Rogue at this point, but I suggest not doing that. First, Ranger is not great after level 5, at least in my opinion. More favoured enemy and Natural Explorer are not very good, and your extra spells, well, Rangers aren't known for having the best spell casting, and you already have some decent utility already. As for the Rogue, you'd be looking at more sneak attack damage, which is good, but there is another way to get more out of this build than just some extra damage, though you will be getting that. Yes, it's my favourite class of dip, it strikes again. Old Faithful, you know you can't go wrong with it, it's the fighter dip. Level 1 fighter gives you self-healing with second wind, and you get to pick a fighting style. I went with 2 weapon fighting, as I'd mentioned before. Increases the effectiveness of your offhands by using your ability score modifier, so dex in this case, because I'm using dex weapons. So at level 10, you're really hard to hit with that 20 plus AC. And remember, I wasn't even looking for all the different items that you can use to improve AC. Obviously there are ways to mix and match to make it very high if you want to. Otherwise, you're doing a ton of damage with your sneak attacks, able to one-shot many enemies, and still fire more attacks with Horde Breaker available, and your extra bonus actions are allowing you to mix and match as you like for some great action economy, with a whole bunch of poisons and potions you're able to use with those bonus actions, and you'll also be able to mix in some single target damage and some great crowd control abilities as well. Max level. For max level, it's simple. You're taking your fighter to level 3. It will give you your action surge, which, as I've mentioned in other videos, is not a bonus action but rather a free action, so can be used alongside your 2 bonus thief actions as well as Horde Breaker for a ton of actions every turn when required. It gives you so many options. You can have your extra attack, you have Horde Breaker, you have your 2 bonus actions, you have the rogue actions, you have poisons, potions, and action surge, and add in some haste or a potion of speed, and you're going to get some crazy mileage from this build every turn. Puny wizards cast 1 spell and are done, but Karlach is shooting twice, with 1 being a sneak attack, poisoning her weapons, or rogue dash into a perfect vantage point and then still being able to do an offhand attack to any poor sod left with a few hit points, thinking that they would survive the round. Then she can use action surge to start ruining someone else's day all over again. Yet there's more. With level 3, it's subclass time. Yes, this build has 3 subclasses, and today's winner is, well, take your pick. You can become a champion for better crits, as this build does like its crits. And if you opted for the assassin, even more so. And with the elixir of viciousness, which I'll mention later in equipment, it means more crits for everyone. So that is one option, but I like to go with Battlemaster here, as it fits more with the versatile hunter theme. Your superiority die and your battle maneuvers allow you to mix in some great debilitating actions in the place of your usual ranged shot or melee attack. I went with disarming attack, trip attack, and rally. The former 2 allow you to debuff an enemy by removing their weapon or making them prone and helpless, while the latter option is a bonus action, and with our 2 bonus thief actions we can happily give an ally in trouble a little help, while still doing our usual turn shenanigans with our other bonus action. One last thing I want to point out, if you are willing to wait on a feat, you can drop level 4 rogue and get level 4 fighter at the end, as both do give the feat, but the fighter technically gives you more health. So feel free to respec at max level if you want. It's not needed and you don't get much health, but technically is better. I still suggest level 4 rogue earlier on, as it is beneficial to max out your decks earlier in my opinion. Equipment. Unlike my 2 previous builds where specific equipment was not as essential to the build, Karlach's Demon Hunter on the other hand benefits greatly from certain equipment. For the general side of things, I suggest starting with medium armor. Despite having a good starting dex bonus by the time you reach the end of Act 1, which will be around about +4 at best, medium armor will still have roughly the same AC anyway. Hence I ended up using Scale Mail +1 in Act 1. But it is up to you, as light and medium can both work, and once you have the fighter levels, even heavy armor can work as well. That said, I suggest in Act 2 getting the armor Yuan T Scale Mail, which is a medium armor but has no dex restriction. You get it from the merchant at the entrance to Last Light. There's also another better armor like this in Act 3, which again has no dex restriction. You get that armor from Damon in Baldurs Gate. Aside from that, you want a heavy crossbow and you want a dual wield dex weapons, as they'll give you a bonus offhand attack, allowing Karlach to shoot and then do a strike with the offhand. As for some specific items to look out for, in Act 1 you have the Gloves of Archery at the Goblin Merchant in the Goblin Camp. Side note, this item in the inventory does not show its effect properly when you look at your actual shooting capabilities, but don't worry, I've tested it and the bonus does work. It's just kind of messed up in the inventory. I did test it to make sure. These gloves therefore are great throughout the game. Also in Act 1, the Zentrum have a crossbow that you can pretty much use until Act 3. It's basically the best heavy crossbow you can get for most of the game. You get the crossbow for clearing out the gnolls that have trapped the Zentrum couriers. As for your dex melee weapons, I went with scimitars and short swords where I could find them. This blade from Damon is quite nice. It's the Sword of Life Stealing. You can get it in Act 2. Plus he also has a scimitar at this point that also does additional acid damage, which is also good. Compared to this, I just used basic scimitars as they're more than enough and they're very easy to get. You basically want the scimitars for your bonus attack, as your crossbow is your main damage source. In Act 2, be on the lookout for Shadowroot sacks as shown here. They will allow you to create the Elixir of Viciousness, which is great for this build. Until you rest, it basically lowers the dice roll required for crits by 1. And with all your attacks, both at range and up close, having a chance to crit, making it even more likely is great. There are other items that you'll find throughout the game that can amplify this more but are not necessary. I will leave those suggestions for my inevitable champion crit fishing build. Final suggestion here is the Deadshot bow found in Act 3 at the merchant near Sorcerer's Sundries, which also can lower crit roll requirement. It works well for this build, but since it's a bow and I'm doing the Demon Hunter and it's all about crossbows, I didn't use it, but I thought I would let you know if you really want to go for those crits. Otherwise, just make sure to keep a steady supply of bombs and arrows, particularly arrows because you can use them as your extra attacks. Just keep on the lookout for hazards in any area that can make use of that, or at least have a friendly who can create either water for the shock or grease for the fire. Combat and tactics. Regarding the tactics of the Demon Hunter, it is all about sneak attacks, horde breaker, and lots of explosions. So Karlach has some flexible tools at her disposal. With your extra bonus action, you can apply poisons to your weapons and then shoot, and then strike again with your offhand. This is the bread and butter of Karlach from the early game until the end. The difference comes in the more tools and abilities that get added as you go on. So the core tactic is pick out a high value target, get a high initiative character such as in my case Assassin Shadowheart, which I used in my playthrough, get them right next to the target. The Assassin is great here because they get advantage against enemies easily based on initiative, so they can do a sneak attack in melee without having an adjacent ally. So you get her to do a sneak attack and then you get Karlach with her crossbow to do a sneak attack as a follow-up, as in this case Shadowheart would be adjacent, giving advantage to Karlach's sneak attack. That said, you first use poison on your crossbow. Remember, poisons last a number of turns, so don't worry about it, just shoot and you'll still have it later. With the Thief's extra bonus actions, you can then move up to strike a mob style enemy, so a lower health one, or someone who's at least weakened. Of course, some enemies will be too tough to end in one turn with this, so that's where the Battle Master comes in. You can use your various maneuvers to debilitate that enemy. You can disarm them or trip them. Trip is great because it will allow everyone else in your team to dogpile that boss. yet that's the single target work. The Demon Hunter also is meant to be good at crowd control, so with the Ranger Hunter you'll be able to get Horde Breaker. And with it, you can strike more enemies so long as they are close to each other. If you see a very juicy crowd of enemies, then you can use the very thematic bombs that you can acquire, as well as arrows. Of course, remember, you also have Action Surge. That means if you're doing the bomb thing, which does require an action, you can at least do it more than once or follow up with something else. Role-playing wise, they're a great addition. That said, arrows as an AoE are much better for this, as they scale with your ranged bonus that takes into account your actual weapon, and you can use it for extra attacks as well. Just make sure to keep a variety of arrows for every situation. Fire and ice, of course, will be staples for causing environmental hazards. The last tactic to remember though is, since you are Karlach, you get access to 2 free smite abilities, being a Tiefling of Zariel. If I recall correctly, one of them can be used at range while the other has to be in melee. I believe the Searing Smite requires melee. Conclusion. So there you have it, Karlach Demon Hunter, a great class that is a glass cannon but with none of the glass. I quite enjoyed this build as it ended up evolving over time, as I started as a pure ranger and I was wondering if I should go Gloomstalker, which can be fun. I will look to make a build based on the Gloomstalker in the future. That said, I hope you enjoyed my take on fantasy's favourite crossbow wielding class. I do think it's a perfect fit for Karlach. In early access I actually thought they might make Karlach a ranger, as she does threaten you with a crossbow in that, and she is wearing medium armour, if I recall correctly. Anyway, make sure to give me your thoughts on the build, and stick around if you want to hear my thoughts on the question of the day, which was, which is your favourite D&D race playable in Baldurs Gate 3 and why? Otherwise, next time I'll be switching back to a custom Tav build. I've been working on a few. 2 currently. One is a very bloody one and the other is a more cerebral build. So make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified of when those come out. Otherwise, please stay safe, have a great day, and thanks for watching. Question of the day. So which is my favourite playable D&D race in Baldurs Gate 3? Well, first caveat, I will leave out my canon race choice, which of course is human, because that's the boring play as yourself choice, rather than which is the most interesting choice. So for the interesting choice, the competition is between half-orcs and dragonborn. I've always liked orcs and half-orcs in many games, and I do love them here, for a variety of reasons. I do like doing the juxtaposition, as I did with my Fey Knight, of having the savage orc become a more noble warrior. On the other hand, the Dragonborn, as of Baldur's Gate 3, they suddenly grew on me. I wasn't sure about them at first, but I found them to be really cool and very loreful. So Dragonborn, 1, they look very cool in this game. I actually have an ongoing Dragonborn Barbarian Assassin character who's a female silver-scaled Dragonborn, and she looks very badass as she minces through enemies with dual scimitars. So yeah, I think they nailed the aesthetics of these. Also, the idea of these draconic outcasts intrigues me, and I've always liked giving some of my fantasy characters monikers for role-playing purposes that included the word dragon, so the red dragon or the blood dragon. Anyway, let me know what your favourite race is. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thanks again for sticking around. I always do appreciate it, and please have a great day.